All right, let's go ahead and get started. And then as folks come in, they'll catch up to speed pretty quickly. So let me go ahead and share my screen with folks. Oops, hold on. All right, everyone. Welcome to Basic Inventory Searching. My name is Laszlo Yakashowski. I'm the business analyst for the Library Systems Group in DLSS. And my fellow presenter is Lorna Corbetta, who's the evening supervisor at the Art and Architecture Library. So we're going to go over how to use the inventory app. If you could, I would go ahead and log into Folio if you have access at this point. I already have it up on my screen, but you're going to want to navigate to folio-test.stanford.edu, and I'll throw that in the chat. And if you don't have access yet, that's all right. We'll be setting up access for folks who don't have it yet. Everybody should, but if you don't, check with your manager and we'll make sure you do. So the first thing about inventory is just to familiarize you with how things look and what you can do in each part of the inventory app. So there's three main elements to the application. They're called panes. The most important one is the search and filter pane, which will allow you to find materials either by using the type of record you're looking for, so instance, holdings, or item. And then within that, you'll be able to use a drop down to pick the information you're looking for that identifies that material. And there's a filter underneath, which is similar to how SearchWorks allows you to facet records when you look them up, that will let you narrow down that initial search term you're looking for so that you can ferret out just the particular records that you want to get. The next pane that you're going to look at is the results pane, which will actually display as soon as you search for something, and it will give you a list of inventory. This is a list of instances. Folio uses the term instance for that bucket of data that holds the bibliographic information, the ordering information, the holdings, the items, any of the information about that particular record is contained within the instance. So when you click on something in the results pane, that instance will appear to your immediate right. There are also action buttons. So both the results pane and the instance pane have some actions associated with them. In general, these are limited to folks who can do those actions, but there are some that are useful to everybody. So for example, for my colleagues in access or circulation, the results pane will allow you to output in transit items. So you'll get a CSV spreadsheet of anything that happens to be in transit. And that's based on what you searched. So if you're looking for materials just in your library and just in a specific location, you can see what's supposed to be coming back to that location. You can also do some, they're not major things, but if you want to give yourself more space on the screen, you can limit yourself by turning off some of the publishers and the relationships and that sort of thing. So you just see maybe the title of the material. Likewise, if you go to the instance pane, most of these have to do with moving instances around or adding orders or requests, which are really outside the scope of this training. If you're one of those staff, you should already be getting training. If not, talk to your manager. But view instance is something I'm going to demo because a lot of people find this handy. It's how you can look up the mark. So if you're familiar with reading mark, where you want to just puzzle out information about it, all that information is contained in the instance record. And I'll show you that in just a second. But if you want to look up the mark, there's a quick and dirty way to do it just by clicking on view source. So let's go ahead and demo that. For those of you playing at home, let's go into inventory, and you can look up your favorite author, the book that you last read, or something that's sitting on your desk. So I'm going to switch over to Folio and show you what that might look like. So for my example, I'm just going to type in, I don't know, just test. It doesn't matter. So that will bring you under the instance a list of all of these materials that have the term test in them, like crash tests. And when you click on crash tests, this will open up the instance. So I'll go into that a little more in detail, but at the top here, you'll see this actions button. If you click on actions, you'll see view source. And that will bring you this mark. So now you can see all the tags, all the associated content with it. So if you're familiar with reading mark and it's more comfortable for you, this is a quick way for you to get there. So let's talk a little bit about looking at the instance record. I'm just going to use the example that I have up on screen, but you can do the same at home with the one that you're looking at. So for example, we have this instance for obviously a government document. The other thing about these you may have seen in the video is if you need more space, you can collapse any of these with the little arrows. You can also scroll over using your mouse as a little scroll. Once you grab the edge of the screen, you can open this record up so you can see it in more detail. And now again, as I mentioned, all this, sorry, the bibliographic information shows up under the tag, but all that information is also contained in the instance. And the handy thing about FOLIO is anything that has data in it is automatically expanded. So you'll see the up arrow. So for example, administrative data has things about when was this item cataloged, you know, what source came and what type of term did they use cataloged. It was actually done. There's information about the title. Now in this case, here's the specific title given to us by the government. There's indexes that you can search by for that title. And then as you scroll down, you get more and more information, which not all of which I'm personally familiar. But for example, identifiers are a good way if you know what the OCLC number is or GPO number. That's another piece of information that's in this record. The contributors, which are not necessarily the personal author, it can also be the corporation, or for like movies, it could be the director, for example, or the producer. And then there you get more and more information about the record as you go down, you know, descriptive data about it, when it was published, any notes that again would appear in the mark. So these are just, you know, specifically calling out the authors, any other bits of information you need about it. Now you'll notice this electronic access one is closed. That's because there's no data there. If I click on the arrow, it's empty. So it's automatically closed by default. Subjects are available, classification is available. So this is a quick and handy way for you to go through all this information, but maybe you don't want to see it all at once. So you'll notice at the top, you've got this collapse all button. And all of this is collapsed. And if I just want to go look at the subject to make sure those are correct, then I can go right to there. And likewise, you can expand all and just open up everything, including things that are not actually in the record itself. So let's look at a holding. I have a particular GovDoc up on the screen, but this one, the one in our example, is just as useful. So let me go back to Folio and show you what that looks like. So for example, you have a holding. A holding is what Folio calls where that material is, but it's not necessarily a physical location. So a holding could be an electronic resource. A holding could be a serial record. It's basically like the instance, think of that as all the ordering and bibliographic information. The holding is, all right, where does this thing live? So for example, when I click on this holding, it gives me basic information about the item record. So you can actually look right at the item, see some general information about it. You know, it's available currently, it can circulate, it's a federal doc. And then as you scroll down, you'll see a little bit more information, like it's a book. Viewing the holdings actually opens up a separate screen. And it's kind of similar to what I showed you with the instance. Let me actually narrow this window down a little so you get to see it all in one place. Folio tends to use a lot of space, so if you ever need to, you can always shrink your windows in your browser. Same sort of thing like with the instance. So you see administrative data, again, about that record, location information, and again, anything that has nothing in there is going to be closed. You can do the same thing. You can collapse all, you can expand all. But this will give you information about that specific holding. So if there were a second record, it would show you a second holding. Let's see if I can expand this up for you here. Now let's talk a little bit about the item record. Let me make sure I'm advancing my slides as well. So the item information, as I mentioned, is here. You see the barcode. You'll notice this is one of those auto-generated barcodes. So that means this item will need to be barcoded at some point if someone wants to circulate it. Again, basic information appears right here, which is very handy. But if you want to see more information about that particular item, you click on it. And again, you get to this screen. The call number, the location. So it will tell you this is in federal docs. It will, I forgot to mention at the top of all of these, you will see a snapshot of the instance title, contributors, and the holding that you're looking at. Likewise, same thing, you'll see what type of material it is. It's a book. The shelving order, which is a little bit more fancy than the actual call number, it gives you another code that Folio uses to track what sequence things are shelved in. And again, if there's any other information, like we deal a lot with holdings, right? So for example, the permanent holding here is green federal docs. If this had another holding, like for example, it was shifted to a different collection in green, staff would change the temporary location to that collection. And while that's in a new temporary location, Folio will make it the effective location. So Folio uses these two locations, the permanent and the temporary, to determine, hey, where is that item? So when you look it up, it'll say, oh, normally it's in federal docs, but it's actually going to be somewhere else. Now, I did skip through the action buttons. I apologize. I'm going to have to go back to that. Actions on the holdings and the items allow you to do certain things with those. So for example, if you want to edit an item, you can do that if you're authorized. I'm not going to show you how to do that. That's part of other trainings. You can duplicate it, which is again more of a cataloging function. For circulation staff, though, there are some ones here that you will be familiar with in other trainings, like how to mark it as missing, how to mark it as unavailable. There are a lot of other options here, only if you're authorized to do that. Not every staff is authorized to do everything. So, you may want to go test it while we're still not live on Folio, just to see if you can do things that you thought you could. And if you don't, then talk to your manager about it. Likewise, let's go back to the holding. So for example, if I want to view the holding, the actions here allow me to do a limited set. So I can edit the holding, I can duplicate it, and I can delete it. Don't want to do these unless you're authorized to do so. All right. Well, let's switch back over here. Okay. So now I did have a specific one that I wanted to show you more details on, and I don't want to take too long because Lorna's got to get working on her section as well. But so let's look at the specific one. And actually, I'm going to ignore the exclamation marks, but if you want to play along at home, well, let's go back to Folio. And you can expand here. The other handy thing that if you want to get back to square one is use this reset all button. And that will basically, boom, delete everything that you've looked up. I want to look up this particular title, and I believe I wanted to look it up in the instance. So let's start with War, Women, Art, Revolution. Now you're going to see 5 titles. All of these have those words in it because this is a keyword search. Lorna's going to talk to you a little bit about that in just a minute. I know I want to look up this particular record because it's without the exclamation marks. So again, this is what I showed you earlier, all this information that is coded into this record, including the identifiers, the contributors. Here's that Hotwire Productions is the production company, so it's not necessarily an author. the other important thing about this is I noted that there is an art DVD for it, which shows one holding that's available. But then what are all these other ones? Well, let's see. There's another art DVD. So in this case, we have multiple instances for different versions of that. Now the film may be identical, it might have been released at a different time. So we're going to have a different instance record that corresponds to each one of those films. The other thing I wanted to show you, just to be sure, is you would understand what the effective location is. So let me go ahead and let's just use this one. So for example, the effective location here is media cage stacks. If you scroll down, you'll see the permanent location and the effective location is the same. But if I change that to a new location, for those of you who are authorized to do so, I'm just going to pick a new location. Let's say Art Media wants it for a while. You'll get this little green toast that says, hey, it succeeded. Now you will look at the temporary location is Art Media. The permanent location is still Art Stacks. And the effective location is Art Media. So if you were to look up this record, you realize, hey, this is a media DVD, but it's living over at Art. And this is useful for things like course reserves. So when you change the location, putting an item on course reserve, it will show the reserve desk that it's living at. Let me just fix that real quick. Actually, I'll fix it when Laura's doing her discussion, so I can come back to it. All right, so let's talk search options, and I'll try not to go too long on this, but there are a lot, so you should at least know about it. The drop down that I showed you, for example, the instance, the holding, and the item have different options. This is because, again, an instance is that bibliographic and ordering information. A holding is just that bucket of where does that thing live, and then the item is the actual thing. Now, some of these are universal, so you can use a keyword search across the board. You can look by ISBN. There's also a folio internal search that I'm not going to go into because it's complicated. How to use all or query search. If you're interested in that and you are one of those folks that uses that, I'd recommend you come to the advanced training session that we're giving on Friday with Charlotte Witt, who helped design inventory. So she's the product owner, as we call her. She's going to go into this a little bit more. Some things are unique. So for example, in the instance, because it's, again, bibliographic information, you're going to see the contributor, the title, and identifiers that you can look that item up by. The holding is not bibliographic information, so it won't give you that specifically, but it may have something you could use, like, for example, looking it up by call number. The instance doesn't care about call number, the holding does. You can also look it up by OCLC number under the instance. Notes, each level of the record has different notes associated with it. So you can look for any notes that you may have placed or your colleagues placed. There's one thing that Lorna will talk about in a second that's really cool, browsing call numbers and contributors, which you can only do under the instance. And that's how you can look up like an author, say, but you don't know their exact names, you just have a first initial, so you can start to look for that. Another thing that I want to call out to people, if you're looking at barcodes, the item dropdown is the only place you can find that. None of these care about barcodes. Only item cares about what the barcode is. So you're going to have to search using the item dropdown. As I mentioned, filters are kind of like search work facets. You can pick a number of different filters, again, based on what you're using. So instance, holdings, and item filters are different. And if you get into trouble, you can always hit reset all, go back to square one, start over. So here are some of those filters, and I just wanted to show you some of the important ones. So the instance, for example, you can look up an instance record by language. So if you want to narrow things down by Chinese or Ukrainian, you would look under language and instance. You can't do that under holding or item because these are subsets of the instance. Likewise, if you want to see where the locations are for the holdings, the instance doesn't care about that, but the holdings will want to show you where those are. And for item, if you're using the item filters, item status is an important one for, especially for anyone working in Access, because that will show you where that location or where that item is. Is it checked out? Is it lost? You know, any of a myriad of potential statuses that that item might have. Okay, so let's demo how to look up an item status. For example, you're going to look up something that's missing, right? I'm going to just look up missing. And that's also the nice thing about Folio is you don't necessarily have to type anything into the search itself. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to reset everything. Okay, I want to look up items that are missing. I just want to find what are missing. So I go to the item status. You'll notice there's a list of these. They're weighted by how many have that status. And unfortunately, there's no way to configure those. Folio just weights them by the most at the top. But you can always find more by clicking on this button and scrolling down and scrolling down. Or the other handy tip is just to type in, once you get used to what these terms are, you can type in, for example, missing. Okay, I want to see what items are missing. Let's take a look. The inventory will show you all the item records you found, as well as here. So you found 4,400 and change missing materials. But you know what? I really want to find items that are missing. I want to find them in media, because I used to be the media ops manager. So I want to find out where my stuff is missing. So here's absolutely fabulous. And then you can look at the holdings and you'll notice there's two holdings. One I think is probably a mistake. And you'll notice that when I toggle this, there's really nothing there. And here are all the items. Well, guess what? All copies of this are missing. And then if you then clicked on the item record, which I'm not going to go into, it would show you when it was declared missing, any notes on it, that sort of thing. So you'll see how you can easily search item status. And this is true for all these other things. You can search by material type and find out, hey, what's a multimedia item that happens to be in the media cage? And I don't even have to look for missing items. I can just look for multimedia items that happen to be in media. So you can easily narrow this down just by using filters. Okay. Before I move on to Lorna's, are there any questions? Looks like Dave got his question answered. Okay. Was that someone speaking in? No?
I'm trying to find the hand here.
All right, go for it.
On that last search where you were searching for the various item statuses, can you combine that with a search for, you know, say a title keyword or something has such and such in the title and is also missing, and so you can combine those all.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I could do, you know, let's go, I don't know, kittens. I don't think I'll find a kittens missing one, but we can try it and see what happens. No results for kittens that are missing, but there may be, like, for test is like my second favorite phrase. Yep. And I found 12 records that are missing that have the term test in them somewhere, but you'll notice it's testing, tests. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do lots of combo searches. So.
And all right, any other questions, folks? I apologize if I don't see the hand because I'm in presenter view. So all right, I'll pass it on to Lorna then. So let me stop my share and then you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Okay, I'm sharing. Can you see the slides, Russell?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, deep breath. That was a lot of information. I'm Lorna at the Art and Architecture Library. I'm going to show you some very basic beginner searching tips showing inventory searching in the instance, holdings, and item tabs. First of all, the basic drop-down menu that Laszlo showed you. We have keyword is always the top, and it searches on title, contributor, identifier, HRID, etc. And then you have separate indexes going down, keyword, contributor, which, as he pointed out, author, editor, director, title, identifier, ISBN, SSN, etc. Those are these top choices. And then you also have the browser options down below, which I will show you some browse in a couple of slides. Some options are universal. Unlike workflows, you can use definite and indefinite articles and the law, etc. Contributor name, you can type it in any order. John Smith, Smith John, and you do not need any punctuation. Phrase searching is a little bit complicated. It's any terms entered in the search are searched as keywords. So I do have some examples which we can look at later, but Charlotte's going to go over this on Friday because it's a much more complex thing than our beginner here searching tips. Reset all, as we said, it is a great way to go back to the beginning. It will take you back to keyword. It will erase everything and go back to keyword. The wildcard in Folio is asterisk, and stemming is automatic in Folio. Searching. So the best and most comprehensive is the keyword search. Here's an example, chiaroscuro. We'll go try and do that in live. Contributor, author, Mr. Pencheva, one of our art history faculty. Title, one of my favorite books, My Brilliant Friend. So let's go search on those examples. You have to type it correctly. So you'll see that in true keyword, you're getting a last name, you're getting something in the title, probably there's some subject headings, but this is an example of the keyword search. So let's try also contributor. Now, as I said, you can go either way. So I'll do last name, first name, no punctuation. I get 16 records, but I can also search by her name in the normal way. And I'm getting the same 16 records. Lastly, title. Oh, I have to reset all, choose title. Oh, better type it correctly. Oh, I didn't do it. My Brilliant Friend. 8 records, and as Laszlo showed you earlier, you can look specifically here. We have 2 copies in green. So those are the basic searching by filters. Oh. Next, the browsing. So browsing is kind of cool. You can browse by call number, contributor, or subject. And you choose that browsing function and it'll allow you to scan through the things near each other. So for example, I didn't know how to spell theater in a subject heading, ER or RE. So I just did this browse and I came up with 3,000 records with the ER spelling. You could try all combinations, but it sets you into the nearest items around it. Filtering is also cool. You can filter by location, language, resource type, format. So here, let's keyword search for theater, and I want to know how many books are in the art library. So I have to type in art because it's not one of the top filters. but I find 125 items. You can also begin a search with the filter. So let's look at that. Reset all. And I'm going to go to effective location first. Now, only the top 5 values in any filter are going to show up, as Laszlo had mentioned. So I have to type in art. And I have art stacks, 123,000 records. And now I can just do keyword theater. And I'm going to get those same 125 records, no matter which way I come at this search. So let's go to the Holdings tab. As Laszlo had shown, all of the indexes are different for each tab. Keyword is always at the top. This one has ISBN, ISSN. Call number iReadable. Now note, that's case sensitive. And call number normalized is you can type, well, not any old thing, but lowercase, no punctuation. So here I've typed in the exact call number, and I do get this result. And then I can type it in lowercase, without punctuation, without even the year, and I still get the same result. So pretty basic. The very last tab is the item tab. Again, keywords at the top, barcode, the most important in this one. Both kind of call numbers. So the barcode tab, the barcode allows you to scan or type or paste in the barcode number. Here I've scanned this in earlier and came up with this result. So I'll show you in live time, item, reset all, and I'm going to very carefully type in a barcode because you have to be exact. Wish I had a barcode. Oh, and I wasn't in the scan. I wish I had a barcode reader here, but I do not. 230. And I actually got a result. So the item tab is the last thing in our beginner search tips that I was going to review. If anyone has any questions, now is the time, or later. Or if anyone has any corrections to things I've said, please, now is the time. I'll go back over to Laszlo for more in-depth searching tips.
All right, thank you, Lorna. All right, folks, let me go and share my screen again with you. And you caught me in FOLIO. Let's advance. So we're going to show you some other options, specifically for the drop downs and for the filters. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about HRIDs, which came up in the chat. But I'll go into that in just a minute. For example, in the instance, you have other options that you can search by that are not typical. Lorna gave you some of the basics stuff. The instance notes, however, for example, are the ability to look up an administrative note or a note that was added to the cataloging record that appears under that particular record. The HRID and the UUID are two terms used in FOLIO. HRID stands for Human Readable ID, and UUID, I believe, is universally unique ID. It's pretty obvious to tell what those are. The HRID, you can tell, is usually a number with a prefix and a suffix. That UUID is going to be a string of characters, numbers, dashes, and letters. The HRID is better to search by if you have a C key, for example. The UUID is really something that is unique to Folio. You can cut and paste it from the URL, but I'd recommend just sending people the URL. It's much faster. So for example, I'm going to demo, like I want to look up some cataloging notes. I happen to know that this series was cataloged with all these notes, and I really want to find those particular ones. So I'm going to use this term, which you can also feel free to use. So I'll throw it into chat for you. Now, if I go over into Folio and I go, I really want to find that instance note, and I want to look up for this item. So you'll see 44 records found. That means all those records have that note in them. So if I look up condensed handbook of measurements and controls, I'm just going to collapse the ribbon. And then down here, you'll see this instance notes. And sure enough, now you'll notice that it doesn't necessarily grab the correct pagination. So it's looking for the keyword terms in that. So it may not grab that specific page. That might be, Charlotte Witt might have some better tips on how to look that up if you really want to ferret it down, but this will find you anything that has bibliographic references and index in the record. If I switch to this one, for example, same thing. Well, you'll notice the page numbers are different. So if you have some keyword terms that you're looking for in those particular instances, this is a quick way to find that data. So there are other filters as well under instance. Resource type is a very useful one, and format, which tells you how it was cataloged and what actual physical format it is. Source is a way to search MARC. I'm not going to go into that in detail. You might want to come to the Friday training session on it, but let me go ahead and show you how to look up the resource type. So for example, I'm going to look up cartographic image. Sorry, sometimes it's a tongue twister for me. So I'm going to be looking up the resource type. Again, this is a filter, not a drop down. So I want to look up cartographic image. You could type it in, you could scroll down the list of filters. If you just type in cartographic, it'll give you all the other resource types, but I really want to find maps, basically. And this will allow you to look up that particular one. And any of these other ones are also cartographic images. So let's talk about holdings. The holding drop down and filters also have different options. Lorna went into the iReadable call number. There's also the HRID, which I will go into in a minute. Holding notes. So if you want to be able to look on a note you left yourself from the holding or someone else cataloged. There are filtering options as well. So if you want to filter by effective location, which is what I talked about in my first part of the presentation, I want to look for things that are at a different location than I would expect them to be. That's a good place to look for those. Permanent locations, the type of holding it is. And then there's some other ones that are a little bit more complicated. Source and tag. We don't actually use tags, but source is something that you might be able to search by. So I'm going to look up something by holdings type. So let's switch back over, clear all this. And I really want to see items that are in, I might want to look up serials. Again, it's weighted, but you see all the different ways that holdings were stated. So in this particular holding, we've got 651,000 and change that are categorized as serials. Just click on any of these. And then you'll notice you've got two serials. This is the physical. And this is the one that actually, I misspoke earlier and for the media item, it's not a mistake, it's a holding. So you'll notice when I click on this arrow up and down, there's nothing there that's an item record, but this is a holding. So if you click on the holding right here under administrative data, you'll notice that it's mentioned as being a serial. So this particular item is a regular periodic release. This is also useful for displaying in SearchWorks. So you'll see some of these records which will have either the type or they'll have the specific volumes called out. So if I scroll down here under the holding statement, you'll see holding 1 or volume 1 rather, and that will show up in SearchWorks so that people can tell what we own. Items also have their own drop downs and they also have their own filters. The best one that access staff in particular will want to use is barcodes. Their effective call number, which again, Lorna went into. There are notes that you can look up for items. There are these new things called circulation notes. So in Folio, you can add a note to the item at the point of checkout, check-in, or anytime you feel like it. That says, hey, this is damaged, so that person shouldn't get billed for it. And then the next time it comes back, you discharge it, it'll say, hey, this is damaged, don't bill the person for it. It's a nice little way to have that. So I'm going to show you a little bit about item notes. Now, item notes were used to port over some of the old circ notes and tech staff notes that came from Symphony specifically. I'm sure Voyager had the same thing for their records. I'm actually going to look up items that were transferred somewhere else from SAL. So here's the term I'm going to look up. Again, let's clear this out. Go into item. We're going to look up an item note, and we're going to try to find items that were originally transferred somewhere from SAL. So, oh, wow, look at these. 766,000 and change of records that were transferred from SAL. Let's pick one. Now, you're not going to find this at the instance level or even at the holding level. You have to go and look under the item itself. And then as you scroll down, you'll see this item notes. Boom. So here's that old tech staff note that you were probably familiar with that said, hey, this was originally transferred to green. If I'm reading this correctly, sorry, I'm not as familiar with these notes, but originally it was transferred from Meyer, and then transferred from green, and then transferred from SAL, and then transferred from green. So this tells you the path that item took when it was being transferred between these various collections. And I happen to know that this was, I believe, around the time that we, it may not be what I thought. I thought this was the time that we moved our VHSs to SAL, but that date seems a little early to me. So, but anyway, that's how you would look up an item note. Okay, so let's talk about filters. So again, items have their own filters. Item status is very useful. Again, effective location is similar to holdings. Date created, I want to caution people because you might seem like, oh, hey, that's the date that it was cataloged, right? No, that is the date it was created in Folio. The cataloging date will actually show in the record itself under the instance. So don't mistake that for the cataloging date. It's not. It's when it was created in Folio, and the date updated means the last time that record was touched in Folio. All right, so let's show you a little bit about item status. Oops, sorry, clear that all. So I want to look up materials in my collection that have a particular status. You'll notice again, it's this familiar drop down and options, I want to see what's checked out. 6,300 records checked out. And if I click on this, and then I look at the holding, the actual item itself is checked out. It normally lives in the law basement. It is a circulating item and it's checked out. Now, if you click on the item record, it's going to give you more details like who the borrower ID is. I'm not going to click on here because we don't want to show a person's name on the screen, but basically this will give you some information right from the inventory level. You can get this information by looking at the user record, but you can find it also in inventory. Here's who borrowed it. It was checked out July 10th at 2:51 p.m. There's that loan date. Here's that due date. And right now, there's no other status. It's not H to lost. It's not overdue. It's still okay. All right. So catalog keys. So in order to carry over those from the old system, library systems and the libraries agreed to bring them over and prefix the cat keys. So you're familiar with the old cat keys in the Symphony system. Instead of having to look them up using the curly Q brackets and all this other stuff that you had to do in workflows, you simply prefix an instance with an A. And likewise, for any Voyager records that have a cat key associated, it's prefixed with an L. But FOLIO is all about uniqueness. It says, yeah, you have a cataloging key, but I want to give a unique ID to that holding that's associated with that instance. I want to give a unique ID to that item that's associated with that instance. So while the instance itself has that base cataloging key, the holding has a different key that simply just adds an H to it to indicate holding, and then an _1 that says this is a holding. Same with an item. It's an I for item and 2 _1s. It's just a way for it to differentiate between whether it's an instance holding, or sorry, instance HRID, or a holding HRID, or an item HRID. So how do we find this stuff? I wouldn't worry about looking up the actual prefix number or prefix letter and number. Actually, I gotta give a shout out to Vitus, who figured out how to do this. Basically, if you're looking up a cataloging key and you have the number, add an A to it if you're looking up an instance. Anywhere else, just use those wildcard characters. So I'm going to use some examples, but you're welcome to try these on the screen, and I'll throw them in chat just so that you have them here. So let's go ahead and switch over and take a look at that. Let's reset this all. And I want to look up an instance by that cap key. So I'm just going to grab one of these at random just to show you. So again, you may have the number part of it. You just add an A to it, search. And there is the instance. And that shows up right here. So under administrative data, which has this general cataloging information, there it is right there. One thing I didn't point out to you is if you ever need to share it, you can just click on the little clipboard and FOLIO will copy it. Another thing that I find very handy is just copy the URL. You don't have to worry so much about the call number and all this stuff. Just grab the URL, share it with a colleague. Like for example, if I open this up, I'm just going to open a new tab here in Chrome. And then you wait because my system's slow, and then boom, there's the record. Same thing. You don't have to share the HRID. You don't have to share any of this information. Just send them a link. And I've got to close this because my system gets slowed down when I'm running Zoom meetings. All right, so let's say you want to look at the holding version of that. Well, you go into holdings. If you look this up, you're not going to find it. At least you shouldn't. Yeah, my system's slow. All right, let's reset that. But let me demo what you would do. Whoops, whoa, sorry, copied the URL and forgot to get the C key. All right, so you're gonna go into holdings. You're gonna use that A asterisk at the end. And then there it is. Now this happens to have one that's similar. So for example, this is close, but no cigars. Notice it's got a 1, so that wildcard found the 1. So that might not be the hot ticket for some of these. You may have to go in and type, holding and then use the asterisk at the end. Sorry, my system is slow. Sorry about that. Let me move on to show you what an item might look like. And it's the same thing. Again, you'll find it, you'll be able to tell the difference. So for example, for this particular record, I'm going to go into the holdings. And again, right at the top under the administrative data, there's that modified C key number. It's got the prefix and the suffix on it. And likewise, if you click on the barcode, right here under administrative data, it's got that item prefix and the suffix. Okay. So that concludes our training session, but any questions? And I did see one in chat. I don't know if it got answered or not. Dave mentions current title control numbers are prefixed with an A. Will that cause confusion? That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I will have to get back on that. Wildcard just been answered. Oh, here we go. Tamar asks, if it's checked out, why would the effective location be listed as law basement? The effective location is going to be where the item currently resides. Checked out is a status. So I don't know if I have that particular record because I've been bouncing around here, but let me see if I can go back to it. I think I was just looking items that were checked out. So you'll notice this is a status. So if I grab, I can't remember which one it was, but it doesn't impact the effective location. The effective location is always going to be either the home location or if it's been moved to a different location. So for example, the home location for this is Federal Docs, which Folio says is now the effective location. I'll see if I can find the law one. Sorry about that. Oh, there we go. Just to demo that one for you. Hope this is right. So again, it doesn't change the effective location. That's where Folio says the item lives right now. It's really in the law basement. The status shows you that it's checked out. So this is not a location, it's a status. Likewise, you could look up things that are in process, for example, and the location could be law basement. And it's not going to change the location. It's just going to say it's in process, but it really should live here once you're done with it. Okay. Any other questions, folks? Are all notes being transferred from Symphony? I will double check, but I believe they are. The plan was definitely to move over all circ staff notes and all the tech staff notes. There were some privileges notes that I think we were also carrying over, but we may have decided not to bring those over. But generally, anything that circulation staff have entered in the item record or processing staff will be carried over.
Hi, Laszlo.
Hey,
When is the report training going to happen? When you want to put out reports?
that I don't know at this point because the reporting teams was still working on their thing, so I can find out.
Okay, because I looked at some of the numbers in the searches, and for example, I used art as the keyword. Then I went down to see which libraries hold each one, and it didn't match. So I mean, it wasn't close. So I was just like, okay.
Okay. I will check with the reporting group on that.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of the reports they were trying to get done beforehand, but there were ones where they just said, we're not going to have time to figure this out before we go live. So, but I'll find out from them. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
okay. Thanks, Greta. Greta pointed out you can't format, can't filter by format for anything cataloged before 2010. That's when they started using the formatting. All right. I think I've gotten everything. Any last questions for folks? Again, let me put a reminder out that if you are cataloging or doing any advanced searching, I recommend you go to the training for Charlotte Witt. If you haven't been invited already, just reach out to me and I can send you an invite to it. But it should have been broadcast widely. And I wanted to thank my fellow presenter, Lorna. She worked really hard. We both did. So thank you so much for showing up. If you have any other questions, let me know. Oh, and Ria just pointed out we do have a training site where we will post the video for this after it's been edited. And it also has a calendar of upcoming trainings. So please feel free to take a look. Oh, and Ray's got a question.
Yeah, probably just the easiest just to turn myself on here. Going back to the holdings reports, and when you had generated a list of missing items, is it possible to export that information into like a spreadsheet?
Yeah, there is a ability to export what you see in the results pane. So let me make sure that before I say yes, absolutely. Let's do missing materials. Sorry, my system gets slowed down when I'm running Zoom simultaneously with other things. So for example, if you just created this report under the actions, you can output, it's not fantastic. It's basically a list of UUIDs, which are those records that are the alphanumeric record. I'm just going to click on one just to show you what it would look like. So if you look up in the URL, for example, here's a sample UUID, and I'll throw that in chat for people, but that's basically what you would see. So it's not great. Reporting is probably a better way to do it, but you can output this list of all these records that are missing as UUIDs, but you're going to basically get a list of just those records. And I'm going to test it if my system will let me, because it might be slow. There's also a way to save the CQL query. So if you ever want to come back to it, but that's getting a little beyond the scope of this training. So the one thing I do point out is if you do want to save that you can limit it. So if you really want to narrow it down to like, I want to see what music scores are missing, for example, then you can narrow it down less, you know, you don't want to have 4,000 of these alphanumeric codes to puzzle through. But once you get that code, you know, you can type it in here, for example, and then search under it. And it should bring up, no, I guess not. Oh, it's because I have the facets selected for something else. Should be able to find that record. I'll have to find out what's going on there, but yeah. And let's see, I think. Okay. I think Greta got responded to. All right, folks. Thank you again. And head on down to our advanced training, which will come up shortly. And then keep an eye out. There will be some other training specifically for Access folks. The next set will be on how to circulate materials. And that's going to be coming up next week. Look for the invitation from me pretty shortly. And then we'll have more and more trainings as time goes on. And as always, you can reach out to us. You can reach out to us through our training channels, or sorry, through our support channels. The Folio support Slack channel, and also our Folio email. The email will actually create a ticket so that we'll get reviewed by one of our support staff and you'll get responded to. All right, folks, thank you so much. And have a great rest of your day.